West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Just when you thought there were no more Trump-endorsed candidates left to lose an election today, another one did. 3 times. It is a once-in-a-century event for the leading candidate for Speaker of the House from the majority party to lose a vote for the speakership. The last time it happened, as you've heard by now, is exactly 100 years ago. In 1923, and the one time that it happened before that was in 1855. And in 1855, it took a full 2 months for the House of Representatives to elect a speaker. That is the record. 2 months to elect a speaker. And as of now, we know it will take at least 2 days after the House adjourned today at the end of the 3rd vote for speaker. Today, the Republican Party in the House of Representatives gave the country a full demonstration of what Republican governance looks like and will look like. A Republican leader who cannot lead and cannot win the votes of his own party because he's being blocked by 20 Republicans. 20 Republicans. 10% of the Republicans in the House of Representatives. They are blocking anything happening in the House of Representatives because they are insisting on voting for another Republican who cannot win the speakership. Republican gridlock created by Republicans voting against Republicans in the House of Representatives. Kevin McCarthy proved today that he is the weakest candidate for Speaker of the House by a majority party in 100 years. And by the 3rd vote today, he got even weaker when the Republican opposition grew from 19 to 20.
Total number of votes cast is 434, of which the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries of the state of New York has received 212. The Honorable Kevin McCarthy of the state of California has received 203. The Honorable Andy Biggs of the state of Arizona has received 10. The Honorable Jim Jordan of the state of Ohio has received 6. Total number of votes cast is 434, of which the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries of the state of New York has received 212. The Honorable Kevin McCarthy of the state of California has received 203. The Honorable Jim Jordan of the state of Ohio has received 19. Total number of votes cast is 434, of which the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries of the state of New York has received 212. The Honorable Kevin McCarthy of the state of California has received 202. The Honorable Jim Jordan of the state of Ohio has received 20. No person having received the majority of the whole number of votes cast by surname, a speaker has not been elected.
There's a lot of history in that video. The candidate with the most votes every time, is the first black candidate for Speaker with the full support of his party, Hakeem Jeffries. And announcing that vote today is the person who is now in charge of the House of Representatives, the first black woman to be in charge of the House of Representatives, Cheryl Johnson, the clerk of the House of Representatives. Clerk is a very important position in the House. And as I told you last night, until a Speaker is elected, Cheryl Johnson is the boss of the House, as she demonstrated today.
The House be in order. Will the House be in order?
And she got the House in order more effectively than any Republican could. Until there is a Speaker of the House, Clerk Cheryl Johnson now has the power to, quote, preserve order and decorum and decide all questions of order. That means anything not decided by a vote of the House will be decided by Cheryl Johnson until a Speaker is elected. If this goes the way it did in 1855, Cheryl Johnson could be in charge of the House for 2 months or longer, because the huge problem for Kevin McCarthy tonight is that there is no deadline on electing a Speaker of the House. No deadline. And deadlines are the most powerful tools that Congress has to force members to coalesce into a majority vote. So Cheryl Johnson will gavel the House into session tomorrow at 12 noon, and we might see exactly the same thing happen again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after. As usual, Donald Trump is now distancing himself from his latest endorsed loser. In a brief phone conversation with NBC News' Garrett Hake, Donald Trump refused to say tonight if he still endorses Kevin McCarthy for Speaker. He said, "We'll see what happens." When he was asked directly if he was still supporting Kevin McCarthy, "We'll see what happens." He said, "I got everybody calling me, wanting my support, but let's see what happens. And we'll go, I got everybody calling, wanting my support. That's all I can say, but we'll see what happens. We'll see how it all works out." So that's what's left of Donald Trump's endorsement of Kevin McCarthy tonight. We'll see what happens. You can be sure that those 20 Republicans who voted against Kevin McCarthy today, who are very friendly with Donald Trump, are reminding Donald Trump of this.
The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters. He should have immediately denounced the mob when he saw what was unfolding. These facts require immediate action by President Trump. Accept his share of responsibility, quell the brewing unrest, and ensure President-elect Biden is able to successfully begin his term.
And not long after that, a panicked Kevin McCarthy thought that that temporary burst of honesty could be cured 2 weeks later in Florida by standing there with Donald Trump and getting his picture taken. This is not Kevin McCarthy's first attempt to win the speakership, as Alex and I were just discussing. First time was in 2015, but his campaign for speakership disintegrated because of a breathtaking public display of stupidity, which also demonstrated that as of then, the Republican Party still had standards of some sort.
What you're going to see is a conservative speaker that takes a conservative Congress that puts a strategy to fight and win. And let me give you one example. Everybody thought Hillary Clinton was unbeatable, right? But we put together a Benghazi special committee, a select committee. What are her numbers today? Her numbers are dropping. Why? Because she's untrustable. But no one would have known any of that had happened had we not thought and made that happen. Good.
The problem with that was that Republicans had literally spent years claiming that their attempt to blame a deadly assault on American officials in Benghazi in 2012 on Hillary Clinton was not political at all. That was the Republican claim. The Republican claim was that they were on a pure fact-finding investigation and they were not out to destroy Hillary Clinton politically in the Benghazi investigation. And when Kevin McCarthy stupidly admitted publicly that harming Hillary Clinton was the only point of the Benghazi investigation, Republican members of the House immediately abandoned him as a possible candidate for Speaker on the grounds that he did not meet the Republican standards at that time for public lying. That's what he got wrong. No one in the Republican Party was surprised that Kevin McCarthy made that mistake then, because Kevin McCarthy's reputation at the time was that he simply was not smart enough to be Speaker of the House. Speaker of the House is a difficult job, but the good ones, the great ones, make it look easier than it is.
She wants to see real time where we are, and she's always adding up the numbers.
Orange and Belcher, Bright, Chandler, Childers, Costello, we have to try to get. I got it to this other meeting. Davis, 14, 15.
Some people count sheep at night. I count votes.
It's really close. I mean, it really is close.
Members are coming back saying, I can't do it. And finally she just said, give me the names and leave me alone.
Give me the names and leave me alone. Kevin McCarthy cannot do that. Kevin McCarthy cannot do what you just saw Nancy Pelosi do. He cannot pick up the phone and call those 20 Republicans and get 16 of them, the minimum that he needs, to change their votes. Donald Trump cannot get 16 of them to change their votes. Some speakers in the past have not just maintained the loyalty of their party, but they have actually been loved by most of the members of their party in the House of Representatives. Speakers like Nancy Pelosi, speakers like Tip O'Neill. None of the Republican speakers of my lifetime have been loved. For the first 40 years of my lifetime, we did not have a Republican Speaker of the House. Then came Newt Gingrich, who was driven out of the job by Republicans. Then came Dennis Hastert, who went out in scandal and ended up in federal prison. And then came John Boehner, who cried his way out of the job. Then came Paul Ryan, who simply gave up and chose not to run for re-election to his House seat. Not a tear was shed for a single one of those Republican speakers when they left, except John Boehner's tears shed for himself. So it will be exactly the same way for Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy knows tonight that not a single tear will be shed for him in the House among Republicans if he ever makes it to Speaker. He also knows tonight that if he loses his attempt to be Speaker, not a single tear will be shed. And if he does make it to Speaker, Kevin McCarthy knows right now he will be the weakest Speaker of the House we have ever seen.
It is Wednesday, the 4th of January of 2022. And you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid us of these meddlesome priests? Will no one? Alrighty, got through that, and speaking of meddlesome, how about the spectacle in the House of Representatives yesterday? Quite the spectacle, though I will just remind folks that Hakeem Jeffrey continues to get more votes to be Speaker of the House, and wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? I suppose the clerk can continue to run the House, even without a Speaker. I need actually to look up the provision. I don't think you need a Speaker to swear in people. I guess we can find that out. Anyway, we will, won't we? So today, I don't know, about an hour after the show, or when the show is wrapping up, we should be starting votes a fourth time. And we'll see where that goes. A lot of pizza was delivered to McCarthy's office where they were having the tete-a-tete. And And I have not been able to actually hone in on what progress, if there's any leaks about any progress or lack thereof from that meeting. But it looks like a vote is scheduled, or the House is scheduled at, what? Oh, maybe it's even earlier. Oh, no. I was looking at Eastern time, and it looks like they've maybe have already gathered to debate and then have a vote for the 4th time. And maybe it's going to go 5 times. Maybe this could go months. And that's where the clerk could come in handy. And anyway, we'll continue with that spectacle. And I should also note, McCarthy is the latest Trump-endorsed candidate to lose a vote. This time 3, maybe 4. All right. Well, I have also pondered whether this gambit of keeping the House from being able to do its business is all part of the plan from the Freedom Caucus, the MAGA fascists, the MAGA Nazis. If their intent was to stop government so that they could take over and assume power, what the hell are they doing right now? Keeping the function of government from functioning. I know. It's still early. I need another cup of coffee. And until the clerk, I think, can step in and start swearing people in, we don't have 118th Congress. It doesn't exist. Yes, fascism in the morning. It just stinks to high heaven, and I hate it. Okay, well, this is what happens when we allow insurgents, seditious insurgents, to be able to assume office after they have violated the 14th Amendment. I'm just saying. We have a story about, the gun laws in Oregon. Voter approved. I mean, let's just nullify elections. Oh, well, you can't put a lock on that. That's unconstitutional. What the hell? Jesus. A woman can't have autonomy over her own body, but now government is going to tell us. Well, maybe they're telling us that we don't have autonomy over our own bodies either. Here, die by guns. Die by malfeasance. Okay, well, some people would say that's the same as it ever was, wouldn't they? Yes, they would. All right, well, with all that stated, and there's so much more. Oh, yeah, since there is so much more, I guess I should attend to a few other issues. The Darnell Hamlin, the football player who had the heart attack on the field, is still being used as part of, I don't know, disruption by hostile actors, foreign and domestic. I think they're in cahoots. Anyway, the anti-vax movement has glommed on to this terrible tragedy that some of us, but a lot of us, witnessed on Monday night. I will say I didn't actually witness it in real time because I was watching Rachel. Okay, I'm sorry. I can watch the football game a little bit later, even though it was an important game, and you can switch back and forth. But Mondays, it's like I wish Rachel had chosen another night, but, there it goes. And I could have watched Rachel later because they do a reprise of her later. So, I heard a door opening. I think a dog entered. Anyway, but it's a good thing that I didn't wait because, at least started watching Rachel because they actually preempted the reprise of Rachel's show for that evening that happens at 9 p.m. here. It's 3 hours later. And to devote to this breaking news story about Darnell Hamlin having a heart attack on the field. Now, like Charlie Kirk and others, and doctors purporting to say, oh, yeah, it's like he had myocardiac arrest, and it was because of the vaccine, and yada, yada, yada. And I've even seen people who say that since there's more heart attacks happening because of the vaccine, people should start learning CPR. You should start learning CPR anyway. But now it's a foregone conclusion. Oh, yeah, the vaccine causes heart attacks, and healthy individuals just fall over. First of all, Darnell Hamlin didn't just fall over from a heart attack. He had the equivalent of, I think, something a little bit more than a fastball to the chest that caused him to miss a beat in his heart and threw off the electrical charge, and he had a heart attack. Why is that so difficult to understand? I'll tell you why. Is it confirmation bias? I consider it to be a little bit more than that. I was going to use the term brainwashing, but there are some experts who believe that brainwashing doesn't exist. Well, this is a pretty good example of it, though, whatever you want to call it. We are all old enough to remember that for hundreds, thousands of years, people wish there was some sort of remedy to people falling over dead from these weird diseases or being scarred for life. So we finally come up with it. And now we got a bunch of people saying, oh, no, you can't have that. That goes against God's law. Oh, really? I'll tell you what God's law is, and that is for idiots like you to shut up because you're in the way of our survival. If you want to get selfish about it. Anyway, that really irks me. All right. And then some local news here. All relatively local. You all know who Jeremy Renner is. He lives in Reno, near Tahoe, Reno area. Not terribly far from where the mothership resides here in southern Oregon. Since we are in the range of the Cascades, I guess you could call it then the Sierras. Anyway, he was in a snowplow accident while he was out helping people. And I think it might have been family members or maybe neighbors or somebody who was stuck in the snow because of the atmospheric river that dumped feet and feet and feet of snow up in the mountains there. And apparently he's like, one of those good guys who goes out and helps people and doesn't, seek the limelight and point the finger at him and say, oh, what a great person I am. I help people. But he got hurt by this snowplow and he was out of it. And it started rolling, which, I don't know, that's scary. He didn't set the brake or put it in neutral, whatever you do with a snowplow so that it doesn't continue moving. But apparently it got engaged and started moving. And in his attempt to get back in the cab and turn it off or, set the parking brake, they showed the picture of this snowcat plow, and the tracks are quite wide. And it looks to me like he might have got caught up in the track. And because looks like you got to get on the track to be able to get into the cab. And so then he's run over. But he did post a photo of him in the hospital there, I believe in Reno. I guess it would be in Reno. And so that's a tragic story as well. So be careful out there. Weather can hurt you. All right. Let us now attend to what we have curated for you today here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy's Bistro Cafe as we begin. And yeah, at the top, that was Lawrence exclaiming that even if he is elected, McCarthy will be the weakest speaker we have ever seen. And Lawrence has seen a few. We all have. On the rest of the menu, U.S. News and World Report will change how its rankings of law schools are calculated after a boycott by a number of top programs. California cops searched black teenagers at nearly 6 times the rate of white teens. And a rural state judge continued to block a provision of Oregon's voter-approved gun law requiring a background check to close the so-called Charleston loophole. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where a journalist in northern Mexico escaped unharmed in the first reported attempt on a reporter's life in the country in the new year. And the U.S. is reopening visa and consular services at its embassy in Cuba. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page, is the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank Kelly for doing so. Across the page there at our homepage at netrootsradio.com, across from that chat room link to the left, is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you could afford to send us what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, for instance, that recurring patronage really does help us pay our bills, which are ever increasing, as you know. And we thank you for doing so, to those who have done so. And we give like a little pre-thanks also to those who are considering it in the future. And I'm not kidding. Your recurring patronage really does help put a dent in these bills. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter while we still can, you can do so at Netroots Radio. This is getting to be a broken record. I apologize. We will, the royal we, I suppose, because that means me, will be getting the link to our Mastodon account that Tom takes care of. So you can follow us at Netroots Radio on Twitter. Tom takes care of that. And our Netroots Radio account over there at Mastodon. And we thank Tom for doing so. Follow me on Twitter. I will be getting a Mastodon account real soon, I promise. But follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary, as you know, on Daily Codes 10 minutes before showtime, and that's where you can locate the actual articles that we are, well, I guess you might say, riffing off of. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. Alrighty. Got the particulars out of the way. Let's get into the meat of the matter. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the Associated Press by Annie Ma. U.S. News and World Report will change how its rankings of law schools are calculated in response to a boycott by a number of top programs. The magazine's changes in methodology, announced on Monday in a letter to law school deans, include an increased weight on outcomes for students such as bar exam passage and employment, and a reduced weight on assessment surveys from academics, lawyers, and judges. The rankings will also give increased weight to school-funded fellowships, many of which steer students toward careers in public service. While we know it is challenging for diverse institutions to be ranked across a common data set, we all have the same goal: to provide the best information to prospective students so they can make one of the most important decisions of their careers. U.S. News is committed to this purpose. U.S. News Executive Chairman and CEO Eric Gertler said in a statement. In the fall, a majority of the top 14 law schools announced they would no longer submit data to or for the rankings. The magazine, which has published the rankings since the 1980s, will continue to rank schools that choose not to participate, relying on publicly available metrics to construct its list. Yale Law School, the first to withdraw from the rankings, said the ranking system was biased against programs meant to boost socioeconomic diversity and support the pursuit of public service careers. Dean Heather Gerken reiterated the school's commitment to staying out of the rankings process after the changes in methodology were announced. Having a window into the operations and decision-making process at U.S. News in recent weeks has only cemented our decision to stop participating in the rankings, Gerken said in a statement. Following Yale's decision to withdraw in November, other law schools followed, including Harvard, the University of California, Berkeley, Stanford, and the University of Michigan. U.S. News said in a letter to deans that it had been in conversation with over 100 representatives of law schools and that a shared set of concerns emerged, which prompted the changes in the rankings. The changes will be reflected in the 2023-24 rankings, which are expected to be published this spring. The changes do not address all the concerns raised by law school leadership. The magazine said it is working on addressing additional issues raised by law school leaders around consideration of loan forgiveness and repayment assistance programs, need-based financial aid, and diversity and socioeconomic factors. Associated Press staff bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. California law enforcement searched teenagers whom officers perceived to be black at nearly 6 times the rate of teens believed to be white during vehicle and pedestrian stops in 2021, according to a state report released yesterday, Tuesday. The annual report by California's Racial and Identity Profiling Advisory Board, part of a law that initially took effect in 2018, is among several reforms taken by the state in recent years amid increased focus on police brutality and racial injustice nationwide. The board's report includes data on vehicle and pedestrian stops by officers from 58 law enforcement agencies in 2021. The data includes what officers perceive to be the race, ethnicity, gender, and disability status of people they stop, so that the state can better identify and analyze bias in policing. The 58 agencies, which include the 23 largest departments in the state, collectively made more than 3.1 million vehicle and pedestrian stops in 2021. By April, all of California's more than 500 law enforcement agencies must submit their data. The data includes how officers perceive an individual's race or gender, even if it is different than how the person identifies, because the officer's perception is what drives bias. The board's work informs agencies, the state's police office training board, and state lawmakers as they change policies and seek to decrease racial disparities and bias in policing. In more than 42% of the 3.1 million stops by those agencies in 2021, the individual was perceived to be Hispanic or Latino, according to the report, and more than 30% were perceived to be white and 15% were believed to be black. Statewide, however, 2021 census estimates say black and African people made up only 6.5% of California's population, while white people were about 35%, and Hispanic or Latino people made up roughly 40% of the state's population that year. Law enforcement searched people who were perceived to be black at 2.2 times the rate of people thought to be white, the report said, and police were more than twice as likely to use force against people they thought were black as compared to people whom officers believed to be white. Bernstein of the Oregonian brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A state judge yesterday, Tuesday, continued to temporarily block Measure 114's provision that would require the completion of a criminal background check before a gun could be sold or transferred in Oregon. Haney County Circuit Judge Robert S. Rascio issued his decision after hearing arguments in court last month. Oregon Special Assistant Attorney General Harry B. Wilson had urged the judge to allow the requirement to become law, arguing it will save lives, is constitutional, and was not originally challenged by Gun Owners of America, the organization which sued the state to block the voter-approved measure. The new background check requirement would close the so-called Charleston loophole. Under current federal law, dealers can sell guns without a completed background check if the check takes longer than 3 business days. That's how the gunman in the 2015 Charleston, South Carolina mass shooting bought his gun and killed 9 black people at a church. Tony Aiello Jr., an attorney for Gun Owners of America, argued in the hearing that the state calls a loophole is actually a relief valve put into the federal law to make sure a gun buyer is not waiting indefinitely for a background check to be completed. In Oregon, state police are in charge of conducting the background checks. He argued that Oregonians under Measure 114 will have no guarantee that state police will process their background checks in a timely manner. Rascio said last month. Rascio last month halted all parts of the Oregon gun control measure. He issued a preliminary injunction against its restrictions on the sale, manufacture, and use of large-capacity magazines, and issued a temporary restraining order on the requirements that people obtain a permit to buy a gun, and that dealers receive a completed background check on buyers before selling or transferring a gun. Seems reasonable, doesn't it? Yesterday, Tuesday, Rascio said he would not treat the background check change separate from Measure 114's permitting requirement, finding that the two are inexorably linked. Only if he finds that the permit requirement to buy a gun is unconstitutional, as the case proceeds, will he evaluate and rule on the completed background check independently, Rascio wrote. The state has said it won't be ready to support a permitting program until March 7th. Rascio said he would hold a hearing on a preliminary injunction regarding the permitting requirement within 10 days of the state informing him that a permitting process is in place and ready to operate. The case was brought by Virginia-based Gun Owners of America and 2 Haney County gun owners. I got to tell you, Haney County, I don't know. I think they got like about 3 people every 40 miles or something. A lot of property, has a lot of rights out there. And they seek to block Measure 14. And the measure narrowly passed, they say, with 50.7% of the vote. Now, since 2018, the Oregon State Police Firearms Instant Check System prevented more than 4,600 felons and more than 2,000 people on probation from illegally buying guns through its current background check program, according to Karen Lejeune, a program manager for the system. The checks also have stopped domestic abusers, fugitives, and people with severe mental illness from illegally obtaining guns, according to the state police. And this is what gun owners of America want to overturn. Nice. All right, let us now get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, Sense and a Different Sensibility. If an American filmmaker wrote and directed a movie that was centered on a black-white interracial relationship and was set, off-season, in a seaside tourist town at the beginning of the 80s when growing conservatism went hand-in-hand with increased racist harassment and violence, it would be a melodrama, it would use nostalgia to pull people in with 80s clothes and hair and a big budget for licensed music, so they could sell the soundtrack, and finally, it would be a message film. So it can be surprising for Americans when British writer-director Sam Mendes gives us In Empire of Light. First, there's more than race going on in Hillary and Stephen's relationship. I mean, he's black, she's white, but also he's young and she's older, and how do I say this? He's neurochemically abled while she suffers from mental illness. Those could be two other movies right there. Plus, Hillary has a relationship with her boss that's important, and she has these co-workers who don't have arcs but have significant moments. Okay, so you think maybe it's not a film about this couple, maybe it's about her. Hillary, she's our focus, slice of life, her life, and she is our guide through the film, until she isn't. At one point, she just leaves the narrative, and the movie follows somebody else, never fully centering on her again. Also, most of the story takes place in this lovingly shot movie palace, so there's got to be some metafilm commentary, right? And there is this speech about how we don't see the darkness between frames of film, giving the illusion of movement, the illusion of life. And you think, okay, that sounds like a centering thematic statement, but Mendes doesn't present it as a lesson that anyone has to learn. Maybe we do? I don't know. It's like Sam Mendes has written a short story and filmed it. You've got all these interesting characters, images, and related concepts with a narrative spur here and there that we're just supposed to let resonate. Empire of Light is so not an American movie, and that's not a bad thing. Just know that going in. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
In 2012 in the United States, about 317,000 motor vehicle crashes involved a large truck. 26,000 truck drivers and their passengers were injured in these crashes, and about 700 died. Trucker safety requires an alert, buckled-up, experienced driver with a reliable vehicle and a strong employer safety program. Seatbelts are the most effective way to prevent an injury or death in a motor vehicle crash, but in 2013, 1 in 6 drivers of large trucks didn't use their seatbelts. Employers can help truck drivers stay safe by committing to driver safety programs at the highest level of leadership, establishing and enforcing driver safety policies, including requiring everyone in the truck to buckle up, and addressing factors that contribute to crashes, such as drowsy and distracted driving. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. When it snows this winter, make sure you clear more than your driveway. Before you hit the road and before you get in the driver's seat, check to be sure that your vehicle's tailpipe is clear of snow. If the tailpipe is blocked, carbon monoxide, an odorless, colorless, and deadly gas produced by your engine can build up quickly inside your vehicle, poisoning anyone inside. To learn more, call 1-800-CDC-INFO. That's 1-800-232-4636.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Arthritis is common among veterans. Traumatic and overuse injuries during active duty are risk factors for developing arthritis. Fortunately, there are low-cost or no-cost strategies that can help veterans manage arthritis. Physical activity can reduce pain and improve function. It can also help improve mood and play a role in managing other chronic conditions, such as heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. You can do low-impact activities, such as walking, biking, swimming, and water aerobics, all good forms of exercise. Arthritis-specific classes can help you get started. Information on classes, exercise programs, and tools are available at cdc.gov/arthritis. These resources can help reduce pain and improve function. Learning self-management techniques can help all veterans become more active, improve their overall quality of life, and thrive.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
This is a message from CDC.
After hurricanes, tornadoes, and floods, standing water and excess moisture help mold grow in your home, garage, and other structures. When you return to a home that has been flooded, know that you're likely to have mold. Mold puts your family's health at risk. If you have mold growing in your home, you should clean it up and fix other water problems, such as leaks in roofs, walls, or plumbing. Keep your children and pets out of affected areas until you've cleaned. Control moisture in your home to prevent mold growth. To remove mold growth from hard surfaces, use commercial products, soap and water, or a bleach solution of no more than 1 cup of household laundry bleach in 1 gallon of water. Follow the manufacturer's instructions. Never mix bleach with ammonia or other household cleaners. It will produce dangerous, toxic fumes. Open windows and doors to provide fresh air.
For more information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Let's talk pardons and the president.
I'm criminal defense attorney Luke Ryan, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
On December 30th, President Biden issued 6 pardons, one to a woman who was the victim of relentless physical abuse, but who at trial was prevented from introducing evidence of battered women syndrome, and 5 to men who had committed federal drug offenses. All 6 completed their sentences decades ago, and all have lived long, productive, law-abiding lives. Some background. The Constitution grants the president the power to grant pardons, commutations, and reprieves. A pardon expunges the crime as if it never happened. A commutation leaves a conviction in place but reduces the sentence. Commutations and pardons both come under the heading clemency. President Coolidge, for example, granted clemency some 1,700 times. FDR almost 4,000. Truman over 2,000. In contrast, the second President Bush, in his 2 terms, issued only 200, and the first President Bush, in his 1 term, 77. President Obama granted clemency over 1,900 times, mostly commutations to persons serving draconian sentences for nonviolent drug offenses. Hopefully, President Biden's recent pardons, including earlier pardons for marijuana offenses, indicate that going forward, this president will emulate President Obama's policy that combined compassion with common sense.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because, as the criminal legal system proves every day, freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1965. That was the day that 8,000 social workers went on strike in New York City. For 28 days that bitter, cold January, these workers marched on the picket lines. They were members of the American Federation of State County Municipal Employees District Council 37 and the Social Service Employees Union. In walking off the job, these working people defied a New York law that forbade public sector workers from going on strike. 10 of the city's 25 welfare offices were completely shut down by the strike. One of the main issues of the action was the massive caseload each worker was expected to carry. Some of the workers who helped organize the action brought their experiences from the civil rights movement, and specifically in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and the Congress of Racial Equality. They were fighting not only for better working conditions, but also better services for their clients. One rallying call for the strike became rehabilitation, not humiliation. Welfare rights and civil rights activists supported the work action. Quickly, the city moved to get an injunction against these working people who were standing up for better conditions. Mayor Robert Wagner fired all of the striking workers. 19 strike leaders were thrown in jail for 2 weeks. With mounting pressure coming from labor and civil rights leaders, the city agreed to appoint a 5-person panel to settle the dispute. The resulting contract made considerable gains for the social workers. Caseloads were capped at 60 clients. They also won improvements in pay, health insurance, vacation, and sick time. The strike is seen as an important victory by public sector workers, not only gaining a better workplace, but also improving service to the public. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 38 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high considerably warmer than yesterday. They're expecting us to go to about 53 to 54 degrees today, and like I said, that is considerably warmer than yesterday. Rainy conditions. Oh, I should mention we are also under an active wind advisory, and we had quite a bit of wind damage the last time we had an advisory. We are currently having rain showers, and we'll have them throughout the day, bringing with it about a quarter inch of rain, and those winds will be out of the east-southeast at 10 to 20 miles per hour. Rain showers tonight with overcast skies, which you would expect. Lows in the mid-40s. Winds out of the southeast at 10 to 15 miles per hour, bringing with it rain overnight at about a quarter of an inch, and then another quarter inch tomorrow, well, where we will have cloudy skies with showers throughout the day. Highs in the low 50s, winds out of the south at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Pollen is rated as none outside the window here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index for the region is in the good range at 24 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at level 1. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 29.66 inches. Visibility is at 7 miles, and relative humidity is at 98%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 55 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 56 with rain showers. Rome is 58 degrees and fair. Kyiv is 35 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 29 and clear. Hong Kong is 63 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 40 degrees and clear. Sydney, Australia is 64 degrees, cloudy with lots of wind. San Francisco, California is 51 degrees with showers in the vicinity, and they are under a flood watch. And New York is 61 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Associated Press staff brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. A journalist in northern Mexico escaped unharmed after a gunman attacked his family's vehicle in the border state of Sonora in the first reported attempt on a reporter's life in the country in the new year. Sunday's attack on the first day of 2023 came after Mexico suffered its worst year of killings of journalists in 3 decades, with at least 15 slayings. The media site La Nota Prensa de Sonora said its director, Omar Castro, was attacked on the city street of Ciudad Obregón. Castro was traveling with his daughter and a nephew when bullets were fired at his sports utility vehicle. The SUV had a La Nota Prensa de Sonora sign on it. The site reported the attacker shouted, "I am going to kill you." It also posted photos of the bullet-scarred vehicle. The newspaper reports mainly on local politics as well as entertainment and other news. Last year, many of the slain journalists were small-town reporters running their own outlets on a shoestring. Others were freelancers, including for national publications in big cities like Tijuana. On December 15th, 2 gunmen astride a motorcycle shot up prominent radio and television journalist Ciro Gomez's Levia's armored vehicle near his Mexico City home. The journalist described the attack and posted photos of his vehicle to social media.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Megan Janetsky of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The United States Embassy in Cuba is reopening visa and consular services today, the first time it has done so since a spate of unexplained health incidents among diplomatic staff in 2017 slashed the American presence in Havana. The embassy confirmed this week it will begin processing immigrant visas with a priority placed on permits to reunite Cubans with family in the U.S. and others like the diversity visa lottery. The resumption comes amid the greatest migratory flight from Cuba in decades, which has placed pressure on the Biden administration to open more legal pathways to Cubans and start a dialogue with the Cuban government despite a historically tense relationship. They are anticipated to give out at least 20,000 visas a year, though it is just a drop in the bucket of the migratory tide, which is fueled by intensifying economic and political crises on the island. In late December, U.S. authorities reported stopping Cubans almost 35,000 times along the Mexico border in November, up 21% from almost 29,000 in October. Month to month, that number has gradually risen. Cubans are now the second largest nationality after Mexicans appearing on the border. The growing migration is due to a complex array of factors, including economic, energy, and political crises, as well as deep discontent among Cubans. While the vast majority of Cuban migrants head to the U.S. via flights to Nicaragua and cross by land at the U.S. border with Mexico, thousands more have also taken a dangerous voyage by sea, traveling 90 miles to the Florida coast, often arriving in rickety, precariously constructed boats packed with migrants. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme aux langues de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.